you're really, really inquisitive about circulatory arrest resuscitation today, and frankly, that's a really tall task, given this audience, and particularly it's just before lunchtime. But head up CPR. Look, I suspect all of you are well up to date with the latest guidelines, the ILPOR systematic review. It's very, very clear. Head up CPR, even with the prescribed bundle of care, is not ready for prime time. Okay, cheers. But the guideline writers are right. Until we can reliably recreate a low flow state, which we can't with the current guidelines, changing head up is potentially harmful. So, what do we do? So, yeah, I'm a pre-hospital emergency medicine physician, and like many of you, my roster around the hospital rate, my outcomes mirrored European average. 1 in 12, yeah? Okay, we're all the same. That was until I changed the way I resuscitated about 6 years ago. So we adopted a physiological resuscitation strategy as opposed to a guideline strategy. 1 in 3 of our resuscitated patients are now alive at 30 days. And it's important to treat this figure with the extreme caution that any internal audit deserves. Okay, it's not a claim of superiority. We actively, obviously, stress testing it for co-founders, etc. However, having reviewed 252 circulatory arrest calls in absolute depth, it strongly supports our change to physiological resuscitation, of which one small aspect is head-up CPR. Okay. So before we begin, an important conflict of interest to declare. I did not invent chest compression synchronized ventilation. However, I have been paid to operationalize it with services. I'm here today to talk about physiology. The principles are universal. It's agnostic to what you actually want to achieve, which is perfusion pressure. Okay, so however you choose to get high quality, good quality perfusion going, that's your choice. You will, however, see the vitamin ventilator on this because that's the equipment I use every day. Right, let's meet Seamus. You might already know him. In this part of the world, he's known as Jakob. If you're in Scotland, it would be Seamus. Or Jimmy, Diego, if you're Spanish. He represents our average circulatory arrest patient, but overweight, mid-60s, with perhaps cardiac and a few respiratory comorbidities. And we fail to resuscitate Seamus 92% of the time. And if you want to wipe his name off those gravestones, you have to understand what? Why he died. Okay? Despite common assumptions, Seamus did not die from a massive heart attack. If you properly study your death certificates, notwithstanding assume, less than half of arrests have primary cardiac origin. Boom. So when I approach Seamus, I like to imagine Seamus enjoying life on the sun lounge when I see him in circulatory arrest. Why? Seamus likes to be head up. He instinctively adopts a position of physiological comfort. Gravity to relieve pressure on his diaphragm, enhancing his functional residual capacity and splinting open his lungs. Air in, air out, blood in, blood out. Red cells oxygenating in single file, CO2 getting removed. Exquisitely designed for life in the sun lounger. Absolutely fecking appalling for cardiac arrest, isn't it? Think about it. Okay. When we first meet Seamus, we never know why he collapsed. And by the way, that is actually quite irrelevant. What is known is his pneumocapillary structure is under strain whilst he's lying flat on his back. His functional residual capacity is reduced. Atelectasis is inevitable and is driving him further and further towards hypoxia. And hypoxia is that horrible downward spiral. Vasoconstriction will what? It will acutely compromise flow through what? His pulmonary vasculature. So everything is being squeezed down, overwhelming his poor right heart. His neighbor hears a commotion and finding the circulatory arrest. We're very proud of this figure, 84% bystander CPR rate at Ireland. She commences chest compressions, shouting for her son to get the AED from the local Gaelic sports ground. And she does guideline consistent CPR, 5 to 6 centimeters. providing some degree of support to the low flow state. And that's through the cardiac pump theory of resuscitation. But his heart is dragged in towards that graveyard, isn't it? Under hypoxic and acidotic stress, it's fibrillating when the AED first analyzed. And 10% of shocks in Ireland are delivered prior to the ambulance service arrival. We're very proud of it. But understanding why this defibrillation frequently converts a shockable rhythm into what? A non-shockable rhythm. It's really important to our understanding of the slow flow state. And what we don't appreciate is if we shock them before we've optimized the pulmonary circulation, that right heart is absolutely pushing up against this gradient of congested, horrible, yucky lung, isn't it? So we blissfully ignored the effects of congested pulmonary circulation far too long in our circulatory arrest research and discussion. Okay? Think about it. You can include any capillary bed, the gut, the muscles, Jesus, even the brain, and blood will still flow back to the right side of the heart, won't it? But if you congest these tiny capillaries, you impede circulation between the right and the left side of the heart. You impede the whole, don't you? The quality, the rate, the depth of chest compressions, best CPR in the world, irrelevant. And the only passage of blood between the right and the left side of the heart is compromised. The neighbor's son arrives, takes over, pushes hard and fast. But every compression, what is it doing? It's forcing more and more and more air out, and Seamus's lung volumes are literally being squeezed well below functional residual closing capacity. And what does that do? Well, squashed lungs are squashed capillary beds. Efficient blood flow is impossible, regardless of the quality of compressions, regardless of the driving force. And anatomically, without an air cushion, further chest compressions do is inflict trauma. And we'll talk about that later this afternoon. To make matters worse, our wonderful first responders arrive with their perfusion reduction device. This is measurable fact. If we don't restore FRC, we are ventilating dead space. We know this. It's a lose-lose calculation. If we pause for breaths, we decrease driving pressure. If we breathe during compressions, we spike intrathoracic pressure, and what does that do? Reduces venous return. So, we're rapidly stopping blood from returning to the heart, simply to do what? Ventilate? Dead space? You're very quiet, you need your food, don't you? Ultimately, what will secure Seamus's plot in this graveyard is the state of his brain. Yeah? While Seamus is being resuscitated flat, he's developing both a cytotoxic and a vasogenic edema. Literally, a traumatic brain injury. Not from impact, but from constipated flow, outflow from his brain. And why is that outflow such an issue? Because as venous pressure rises in the chest, which we artificially do, okay, that entire pressure gradient out of the skull collapses. So now with that, where's the blood going to drain? It can't drain. It can't escape. It pulls, it swells, it suffocates its own tissue from within. So sitting Seamus up in an attempt to improve both pulmonary and cerebral hemodynamics makes sense. But what does the literature say? Well, it depicts it's amazing. Elevate the head and thorax, lowers intracranial pressure, raises both cerebral and coronary perfusion pressure. But there's one crucial caveat. You can't do it unless you build and maintain adequate MAP. Otherwise, all of that gradient just drains, and it drains down into dependent capillary beds. So, it's a hemodynamic problem. This is basic hemodynamics. In the animal world, what do? They engineered a whole package, a bundle of care to mitigate that drop. And it really works well in pigs, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. But Seamus is not a pig. Pigs run horizontal physiology. They have tiny little leg veins. Seamus has got these great big capacitance in his thigh and his buttocks, don't they? It drains. Humans are tall and vertical. Gravity drains the chest. So simply put, the prescribed bundle of care is not strong enough to reliably drive blood up in Seamus. That's why it doesn't work. So, agnostic to how you do this, because there's some phenomenal people in this room who are doing some phenomenal stuff, bringing blood pressures up. If you can reliably optimize your low flow state like this, or like this, elevating the head and thorax becomes a physiological asset. Fully automated CPR is a fully monitored, it's multi-modal strategy, not a solitary intervention. Its focus is on optimizing the low flow state for the individual patient in front of you. I do not follow the guidelines, all right? Both passive and active mechanical ventilation strategies are part of this. Both manual and both mechanical CPR strategies are part of this. The true strength in fully automated CPR lies in maximizing CRM, okay, which is facilitate basically the deployment of things like advanced electrical protocols, precise pharmacodynamics, or titration of infusions. And relevant to this discussion is unlocking the value or the benefits of putting the head and the thorax up. So let me walk through my approach to Seamus, which I'm sure is slightly radical and a little bit different to what you do. When I arrive, I ask that CPR never stops. There's no point shocking your heart until that passage, that road to the lungs is wide open again. I do not stop. I put the BVM to one side. It's in the swimming pool there. I use a Mason C circuit with a delicate touch of PEEP to rebuild the lungs' resting volume. Nothing more. Not just so that air can enter, but so blood can flow and transit through the lungs. Let me stress this again. Collapsed alveolar are collapsed capillary beds. So if you open them, forward blood flow is compromised. With a patent airway, passive air exhalation results in compression. Oh, with a patent airway, the passive exhalation results from compression downstroke. With a supraglottic airway, a pair of hands can be free, and that distended but freely moving bag is a sign the lungs are splintered open. Blood is flowing again, and we are calling this passive ventilation. Note, we do not squeeze the bag. Resist the urge to squeeze. Get saturations on, end-tidal CO2, non-invasive blood pressure early. Don't really care about the pads. You know you're doing something right if Seamus is perfusing his fingertips and his passive ventilation capnography is looking like this. Diastolic over 40, his pulmonary circuit's open, I'm going to defibrillate, right? Because he's a better chance of sustaining loss. Yeah, no, unfortunately it didn't work. All right, so moving on. Whilst I might reach for a tincture of a pulmonary vasoconstrictor to mitigate for the low flow state, or maybe naloxone if he's been chasing the dragon that night, I'm definitely not blindly administering 1 milligram super boluses of adrenaline. It's illogical. I'd like to propose that the first phase of optimizing the low flow state does not involve repeatedly compromising perfusion pressure with cyclical pauses. It does not involve forcing gas exchange before the thorax is structurally ready to support flow. And it does not involve drugs, which drive pulmonary vasoresistance even higher. And it certainly doesn't involve shocking a heart. Think about it. Into a perfusing rhythm, because the pulmonary vasculature is still congested. Instead, it begins by gently opening up the pneumocapillary structure, maintaining functional residual capacity, and restoring blood flow through the lungs. Now, passive ventilation is only going to get you so far. In prolonged rest, you require acid-base balance and homeostasis. You're not going to get a quick ROSC, okay? We haven't solved his resting issue, and we're still forcing him to lay flat on his back. Passive ventilation is only going to get you so far. Your active ventilation strategy post-ROSC really matters after you've intubated. So real-world human data has been published following an RCT in Madrid, and essentially finding that most neurologically attacked survivors are the chest compression synchronized ventilation group, but most importantly, in the groups where a mechanical ventilator was used. So I urge you to investigate your own ventilatory strategies post-intubation. But the most important thing, you intubate, what do? Wide open lungs again, your lungs will have collapsed, right? So during any circuit disconnection, but particularly suctioning, restore FRC again. Touch a peak. You can use an Apison C circuit. You can also pop somebody onto a ventilator with a bit of bi-level ventilation. But before starting with active ventilation strategy, restore FRC again. In this case, I'm using CCS3. So a quick blood pressure check. You should see that he's perfusing. Yep, he is. Mighty. And we go head up. Nothing complicated. We use what we have available in the environment to progressively raise his head and thorax in order to decongest stagnant capillary beds, ventilate, and restore that pig complexion to Seamus.
One question at a time, Peter.
It's an incremental approach. You can't just whip them up to 30 degrees. You're going to lose some flow. So nice and gentle, progressive, okay? Ideally, we do this on an ambulance trolley, bit of mechanical chest compression device that's capable of its efficiency at any angle, and we just gently raise the ankle. All right? The decision to use head up must result in measurable physiological improvements. It has to. And for those who love endovascular, ideally, you monitor with an arc line. It's so much easier to insert whilst on fully automated CPR. It allows us to gently titrate inotropes, fine-tune hemodynamics on the move, and bridge them to hospital. So huge kudos to the SPEAR team here. I see Helden's about today. Really, this is the future. And I thank the last speaker who talked about NERS and the last session, because that's really how we want to go forward and directly analyze this. So in the last minute, it's really useful to look at a real-world case. So this is Jakob, he arrested following his stemming, treated using standard guidelines. I'm pretty sure that is what you look at, yeah? That's realistic, no blood pressure, poor SATs, poor CO2, doesn't surprise you. 16 shots later, no closer to ROSC, we've all been there. In an attempt to bridge to PCI, fully automated CPR was commenced, and on rendezvous with the critical care team, you'll see that first attempt to go head up failed for the perfusion, properly titrated adrenaline, back up, head up again, and you see the physiological improvement. And these were his blood gases when he arrived at our department. He's still in circulatory arrest at this point. After 90 minutes in a low flow state, went on to PCI, made a full recovery. So look guys, tailored physiological resuscitation, which we call FRCPR in our service, it's a CRM win, enables us the perfusion pressure to require and enable us to unlock head-up CPR. And I'll be back after lunch to discuss that driving pressure itself, the very engine that generates that force, mechanical CPR. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason, for an interesting talk. I think